He arrived in New York at just 6 months old, which means he has no memory of coming to America at all. He grew up in a Harlem apartment, worked as a grocery clerk to pay for college, and dropped out 8 credits short of his degree. But today, he owns the oil refinery, the gas stations, the supermarkets, and the radio station that keep a chunk of the Northeast running. His name is John Catsimatidis, and before we get to his crazy story, let's look at 7 similar Greek dynasties that quietly built fortunes in America. Number 8. The Marcus Dynasty. Let's start on the West Coast, with a man who arrived in California from the Greek island of Evia at 4 years old and built one of the most powerful real estate operations in the country without most people ever hearing his name. George Marcus didn't do it with press releases or personality. He did it by noticing something in 1971 that almost nobody else in his industry had worked out yet, which is that commercial property was still being bought and sold almost entirely on gut instinct, personal relationships, and whatever a broker happened to know about his own patch. There was no shared information. So when he co-founded Marcus and Millichap, he built a standardized data-sharing network across regional property markets, essentially giving his brokers a map while everybody else was working from memory. That firm now handles tens of billions of dollars in commercial real estate transactions every single year. But the genuinely clever part came alongside it, because Marcus also co-founded Essex Property Trust, a publicly traded real estate investment trust holding stakes in hundreds of apartment communities across California and the Pacific Northwest, running to tens of thousands of residential units. And think about what that actually means as a machine. When housing demand on the West Coast rises, and over the past 2 decades it has risen relentlessly, the family collects across every one of those units at once. That's not property ownership. That's a toll booth on some of the most supply-constrained land in America. The family fortune sits at around $2 billion, and the lifestyle around it is quietly influential in a way that doesn't make headlines. Marcus owns Coccari Estiatorio in San Francisco and Evia in Palo Alto, 2 of the most celebrated Greek restaurants in California, and if you've ever wondered where Silicon Valley venture capitalists take a meeting they actually care about, now you know. Those aren't restaurants so much as relationship infrastructure. He's also given tens of millions to San Francisco State University's arts programs and supports Greek studies and Orthodox charities, which is the sort of slow institutional philanthropy that turns out to be one of the most consistent features of how these families hold on to influence across generations. Number 7. The Spanos Dynasty. Alex Spanos started his working life selling sandwiches to migrant farm workers in California's Central Valley. Not figuratively. An actual cart, actual sandwiches, out in the fields of San Joaquin County. Then he borrowed $800, moved into construction, and built A.G. Spanos Companies into one of the largest multifamily residential builders in the United States, putting tens of thousands of apartment units into the ground across the country over several decades. Apartments are about as unglamorous as construction gets, which is precisely why there was so much money in it. By 1984, he had enough capital to buy a majority stake in the NFL's San Diego Chargers. That franchise is now the Los Angeles Chargers. It's run by his son Dean, and its valuation has climbed past $4.5 billion, with the family's combined fortune sitting around $2.4 billion. And the move to Los Angeles was never really a football decision. SoFi Stadium in Inglewood is a multi-billion-dollar entertainment complex that hosts concerts, championship events, and award shows alongside the games, which means owning a franchise inside it puts the family squarely in the middle of Hollywood's sports and entertainment economy. Those private suites are where studio executives and music industry people do business, in a room that feels like leisure rather than work. The Spanos family supplies the room. Dean runs the franchise's chairman. His sons A.G. and John handle business operations and football strategy, and the whole structure sits inside family trusts that keep outside investors away from it entirely. A generational sports asset in the second largest media market in America, held privately and handed down deliberately. From a sandwich cart to an NFL franchise inside one generation. But what happens when a family starts 3 generations up instead? Let's find out. Number 6. The Niarchos Dynasty. Some fortunes get built, some get inherited, and occasionally one gets inherited and then transformed so completely that you have to go back 3 generations to recognize where it came from. The Niarchos money started with Stavros Niarchos, who assembled one of the largest supertanker fleets on Earth in the years after the Second World War. At the exact moment global demand for moving energy across oceans was exploding. A small handful of Greek shipping families positioned themselves at the center of that, and Stavros became one of the most socially prominent men of the 20th century, famous for his private island of Spetsopola, his yacht, and a jet-set life that put him in the same rooms as European royalty and Hollywood at the same time. Speaking of spotting the exact moment the world is about to need something, there's a program someone on our team has been curious about called the Billionaire Brain Wave. It's a simple 7-minute audio built around theta brainwave research, the deep focus brain state linked to where big creative ideas come from. You put on headphones once a day, usually with your morning coffee, and that's the whole routine. It's a one-time $39. It comes with bonus guides on money habits and investing basics, and there's a 90-day money-back guarantee, so testing it costs you nothing if it's not for you. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the Niarchos story, and what the next generation did with all of it. Today, the family is led by his eldest son, Philip, and the fortune, estimated around $2.8 billion, has drifted a long way from the water. Because Philip took his father's art collection and turned it into something genuinely extraordinary. The Niarchos private collection includes Van Gogh's self-portrait with bandaged ear, a record-breaking Basquiat self-portrait, and major works by Picasso and Warhol, with the art alone estimated at over $2 billion. Which means a shipping family now holds an asset class that has outperformed most financial markets for decades and is physically impossible for anybody else to replicate. The family also owns the Kulm Hotel and the Grand Hotel Kronenhof in St. Moritz, two of the most prestigious alpine hospitality assets in Europe, and their residences run across multiple countries. Now, I should be straight with you about something, because it applies to a few names on this list. The Niarchos family is European rather than American. Their money moves through American auction houses, American art markets, and American finance constantly, but they're not sitting in New York. Greek wealth works as a genuinely global network, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Their assets sit behind offshore trusts and Swiss private banking structures, alongside the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, which funded the enormous cultural center bearing the family name in Athens. The Niarchos family inherited an empire and redecorated it, but the next man on this list bought his empire out of bankruptcy courts, one broken brand at a time. Number 5. The Metropolis Dynasty. Quick question. What did Twinkies, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Bumblebee Tuna, and the Playboy Mansion have in common? They all belong to the same family story, and that combination alone should tell you something unusual is happening here. C. Dean Metropolis arrived in the United States from Greece at 10 years old, bought his first Vermont cheese company at 32, and spent 4 decades turning Metropolis & Company into one of the most consistently profitable brand rescue operations in American business. The strategy is almost embarrassingly simple to describe and extremely difficult to execute. Find an iconic American brand that has gone bankrupt or got lost inside a corporation that doesn't understand it. Buy it cheap, fix the operations, restore what made the brand matter in the first place, and sell it for a number that looks impossible until you check his track record. Hostess is the centerpiece. He acquired the bankrupt maker of Twinkies out of liquidation for $410 million. In 2023, it sold to J.M. Smucker for $5.6 billion. Across dozens of acquisitions, his firm has executed tens of billions of dollars in total transaction value, and the family fortune sits around $4.3 billion, almost all of it made inside one man's career. Then there's the Playboy Mansion, because you genuinely cannot tell this family's story without it. In 2016, Dean's son Darren bought the mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles for $100 million, at the time the most expensive residential sale in the history of Los Angeles County, and combined it with an adjoining estate he already owned to restore the whole compound as a single private property. Darren and his brother Evan now run the firm as co-principals. The family signed the Giving Pledge, directing a substantial portion of the fortune toward cancer research and education, including an institute in Dean's name at Babson College. A family that built everything on rescuing things other people had written off, apparently doing the same thing outside of business. Metropolis rescues American brands from bankruptcy. There's a man in Athens who bought a football club, a fleet of tankers, and the television channels that report on both. Number 4. The Marinakis Dynasty. There's a specific word for what Evangelos Marinakis has built, and the word is empire, not as a compliment. Structurally, the foundation is Capital Maritime and Trading Corporation, a fleet of crude oil tankers, container ships, and LNG carriers he has spent decades building and upgrading, and his early bet on dual-fuel vessels positioned the fleet well ahead of global decarbonization rules. That's the sort of long-horizon industrial thinking that separates the shipping families who grow from the ones who quietly erode. The family fortune has reached around $7 billion, most of it sitting in that maritime infrastructure. But he didn't stop at the water, and this is what separates him from every other shipping name here. Through his media group, he owns top-rated national television channels in Greece, including Mega TV, major newspapers including Tevima and Tania, and a network of digital platforms. That isn't a vanity purchase. It's an influence layer running parallel to the commercial empire, and most shipping billionaires simply don't have one. Then the football. Marinakis owns Olympiakos, the most successful club in Greek history, which won the UEFA Conference League in 2024, the first time any Greek club had taken a major European trophy. He also owns Nottingham Forest in the English Premier League, having carried them up from the championship, and holds a stake in Rio Ave in Portugal. 3 clubs, 3 countries, 1 ownership structure, with his son Miltiadis being prepared in real time to inherit the whole thing. The lifestyle matches. Private jets, super yachts, property in Knightsbridge and along the Athens Riviera, and a security operation that travels everywhere with him. And again, in the interest of being straight with you, Marinakis operates out of Athens and London rather than America. His ships call at American ports and his capital moves through American markets, but he isn't a New York story. Marinakis makes noise in 3 countries at once. The wealthiest Greek shipowner alive does the opposite, and she was training to be a doctor. Number 3. The Angelikousis Dynasty. Here's a sentence that takes a second to land properly. Maria Angelikousis is the wealthiest person in Greece. Not the wealthiest woman. The wealthiest person, full stop, in a country with one of the deepest traditions of shipping fortunes anywhere on Earth, with a fortune estimated around $7.5 billion. And here's what makes her remarkable beyond the number. She never planned to do any of this. She studied medicine at Cambridge, qualified as a doctor, and was building a medical career when her father John Angelikousis died, and she came back to take over the largest privately owned shipping fleet in Greece. Most people handed an empire they never asked for would hire a professional chief executive, keep a board seat, and step back. She became the operator instead. The fleet runs across 3 arms. Marin Tankers moves crude oil and refined petroleum. Marin Gas Maritime runs specialized LNG carriers. Marin Dry Cargo handles bulk industrial commodities. Together they form a private energy transport operation woven into global supply chains in a way almost nobody thinks about but everybody depends on. A meaningful share of the energy powering American industry has spent part of its journey aboard a ship carrying that family's name. What's structurally fascinating is the refusal to go public. The group is entirely family-owned, with no outside institutional shareholders and no obligation to report quarterly to anyone, which means Maria can make a billion-dollar decision about rebuilding the LNG fleet for decarbonization without a shareholder vote or an analyst downgrade. That's a level of operational freedom almost no corporate leader on Earth actually has. Her personal life is deliberately private, which at this altitude is its own form of power. Cambridge-educated, technically credentialed, in an industry not famous for academic pedigree, and almost entirely absent from public view. The quietest empire on this list belongs to a woman who nearly became a doctor. The loudest belongs to 2 brothers who bagged groceries for 25 cents an hour. Number 2. The Gores Dynasty. 2 brothers born in Nazareth to a father of Greek descent and a Lebanese mother, who arrived in Michigan as children after a 5-year wait for visas and started working in their uncle's grocery store in Flint. Alec was 15 and bagging groceries for 25 cents an hour. Tom was 4 when the family landed. Between them, they have built a combined fortune well past $16 billion through two entirely separate private equity firms. Tom founded Platinum Equity in 1995 on a specific thesis, which is that large corporations constantly need to offload complicated, undervalued businesses they no longer want. And if you're willing to do the unglamorous operational work of fixing those businesses rather than just financially engineering them, the returns are enormous. It worked spectacularly. Platinum now manages tens of billions in assets, and as of 2026, Tom's personal net worth has been estimated at over $10 billion. Alec went a different route through the Gores Group, pioneering technology-focused buyouts and later becoming one of the central figures in popularizing SPACs, those blank check vehicles that raised billions for corporate acquisitions across the tech sector. His fortune sits in the region of $6 billion. Two brothers, two firms, two philosophies, one shared instinct for things other people had undervalued. The Hollywood connection runs through both real estate and sport. Tom owns a $100 million estate in Holmby Hills, and he owns the NBA's Detroit Pistons, which means he moves between professional basketball, music culture, and Hollywood in a way very few private equity executives ever manage. The relationships that courtside seat generates are worth considerably more than the franchise's balance sheet suggests. There's a third brother, too, Sam, who chairs Paradigm Talent Agency in Beverly Hills and is one of the most powerful agents in the business. Second-generation family members now hold leadership positions across the firms and the family office, which means the machine has been deliberately designed so that no single person is indispensable to it. The Gores brothers turned 25 cents an hour into $16 billion. Number one didn't even know he'd arrived in America because he was 6 months old. Number 1. The Katzimatidis Dynasty. Now back to where we started. John Katzimatidis was 6 months old when his parents carried him from the rocky Greek island of Nisseros to New York City. No memory of arriving. No dramatic moment of immigration to look back on. He simply grew up in West Harlem, went through the New York public school system, and enrolled at New York University to study electrical engineering, working as a clerk in a small neighborhood supermarket to pay his way. Then, 8 credits short of his degree, he did the maths on that grocery store and quit. He scraped together enough to buy into the shop where he'd been working, and by the time he was 24 or 25, he had 10 Red Apple stores running across Manhattan and the Bronx doing $25 million a year. Read that again. A college dropout in his mid-20s, 10 supermarkets in Manhattan. That isn't a lucky break, that's a very specific commercial instinct running at full speed. By 1985, the chain was doing $110 million in sales. In 1986, he bought 36 Gristetti's supermarkets and 11 affiliated specialty food stores in a single transaction, and today he owns Gristetti's and D'Agostino, which together give him a serious position in how Manhattan actually eats. But the move that changed the scale of everything was energy. That same year, he acquired United Refining Company out of bankruptcy, and he built it into a refinery processing 70,000 barrels of crude oil a day, feeding over 400 gas stations and convenience stores across Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio under the Quick Fill, Country Fare, and Red Apple names. He didn't just buy fuel infrastructure. For an enormous swathe of the American Northeast, he became it. His personal fortune is generally estimated somewhere between $4 and $5 billion, with roughly $2 billion of that sitting in real estate across New York, Florida, and Pennsylvania, including a 45-story residential tower in St. Petersburg. And in 2019, he bought WABC 770 AM, the legendary New York talk radio station, for $12.5 million, where he now hosts his own weekend and evening shows. He also ran for mayor of New York in 2013 and spent a great deal of his own money doing it. He lost. He kept the businesses. The family is fully inside the empire now, with his son John Jr. serving as president and chief operating officer, overseeing energy trading and acquisitions, and his daughter Andrea as an executive vice president of the group. Now, the question in this video's title: why can't anybody touch this family? The simple answer is that there's nothing to touch. He arrived legally as an infant, naturalized decades ago, and raised American-born children. But the real answer is infrastructure, and it's worth sitting with. If United Refining stopped processing crude tomorrow, over 400 filling stations go dark across 3 states. If the grocery logistics paused, Manhattan neighborhoods have a food distribution problem within days. These aren't companies that happen to operate in America. They're part of the daily mechanics of how a region functions. That's the difference between being wealthy and being load-bearing. A 6-month-old from Niziros grew up in a Harlem apartment and ended up owning the fuel, the food, the buildings, and the radio station that keep a piece of New York running. And that's all 8. 8 Greek dynasties, 8 completely different routes, and one thing running through every single one of them. Not one of these families waited to be handed a seat at the table. They built the table, bought the building it sits in, and then let everybody else come and find them. So which one surprised you the most? The sandwich cart that turned into an NFL franchise, the doctor who inherited the largest fleet in Greece, or the 6-month-old from Niceros who ended up owning the refinery? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to Global Status, because we break down empires like this every single week.